Out to Alan and his family that so many of his friends, football players and otherwise, from the good old days, took time out of their schedule to join us here to honor Alan after 30 years of service to his country. So to all of you, thank you very much for coming out today. Also, and most importantly, want to thank his family at the top of the list. So if I could, like to recognize his family. His dad is going to put down the camera here for just a second. All right, sir. So Gary Kellogg, Alan's dad. First, sir, I want to thank you for your service in uniform as an Air Force veteran. And I know you've retired now as an accountant, but not only serving in uniform, but also serving veterans out of uniform through service in the Veterans Administration. So thank you very much. I think maybe more importantly, especially for today's occasion, thanks for what you did to raise a son with a work ethic, with the values, with the character, and with the selflessness and humility that any of us who have served with Alan have had the privilege to see firsthand the results of your work. Not only your work, but also the work of your wife. And I know she's looking down on us, and Alan's mom. I know we lost her 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago now, and a woman who, during Alan's deployment, wrote over 700 letters, a letter for every day that Alan was deployed. And in every one of those letters, she ended it with, "God loves you, and so do I." And I think Alan will talk a little bit about that, but men like him don't just happen. They happen because of parents like you, because of siblings and family like you, and because of teammates like the great men in the back. But thank you for what you've done. So if we give him a round of applause. We have Alan's sister Julia Jordan and their husband DJ. Thank you guys for coming, and their daughters. So Anastasia, I think Anastasia is going to help us with some presentations here. Keita, and is Keita here? Hey, Keita, how are you?
Good, how are you?
And also Allie. So now people are moving around. There's Allie. Allie, her husband DJ, and then I'm sorry, her husband Austin, and then their two lovely boys Ronan and Sawyer. So if I could, real quick, for those of you that don't know, Austin is also a veteran. 11 Bravo, who served with the 4th Infantry Division in Fort Carson, Colorado, and the young man is horrifically out of uniform today. So I'd like to, if I could, give him a Soldier for Life pin to recognize his service and thank him for serving his country. So, thank you, sir. Take it. I'm borrowing your phone. All right. And then just a couple of more. His in-law, his mother-in-law and father-in-law. So we have Forrest and Cheryl Tegmeyer, Andrea's mom and dad. Thank you very much for coming. And also his brother and sister-in-law. Where are we at? Right back here. So Tony Tegmeyer and his wife Susan. Thank you both very much for coming as well. And then paramount in importance, obviously, Andrea and the girls. So the gents in the back may remember Andrea as the cute cheerleader. Y'all, probably several of you vying for attention, and you all lost. and the finance and insurance major, but who is now got her nursing degree and is serving in a different way as a nurse in a neonatal intensive care unit at a hospital in Louisville. And I've seen firsthand the impact that she's had. I can't imagine the emotional burden that goes with that. And it takes a really special person to do that kind of thing. And I've seen firsthand in the families that were assigned to a command before Alan kicked me out. And just what a tremendous, she would always make time to give Alan an update to give to the family, or make a special call to a family of a young premature baby to make sure that they knew that their son or daughter was in the best hands possible with someone who really cares. So Andrea, thank you, and more on you a little bit later. And to their beautiful ladies, Naya and Emery. So look at these two. Obviously, they did not get their looks from him. The bloodline flowed from that side of the second row and back here with Andrea. So Naya is a rising junior at the University of Kentucky, former lacrosse player, coming off Dean's List and a 4.0 semester, en route to being a physician's assistant, or whatever the heck she wants to be. And then Emery just graduated after helping her team, her field hockey team, go to the state playoffs for the first time in the school's history. Now she's headed to Western Kentucky on an academic scholarship. So again, bloodline from Andrea's side clearly helped with where the ladies are going. So Alan had a separate ceremony at Fort Knox. So obviously there's a ton of people at Fort Knox that got to give Alan a send-off and recognize him and thank him for everything that he's done. But Alan wanted to come back to where it all started for his official retirement. And I think that says something really special about the people in this room and your impact on Alan's life. So yes, it's where he played football. He was a 4-year starter and a 2-year co-captain. Yep, that's great. Yeah, he also met Andrea here, obviously, and that's probably paramount in importance. And so 4 years, that's 34 years ago. 34 years ago, even though she doesn't look that old. And they've been married 30 years. So 30 years are a great marriage, and again, that marriage, his service not possible without what she's done for him. And then also, it's where his ROTC and military career started. Now, by Alan's accounting, he and one other member of this audience who has initials that are SS, I won't name anybody, were probably the 2 cadets with the least potential in the entire program. So that's either a horrific indictment of the Army's ability to recognize talent, or it's a credit to the great quality of men and women that this university produces. So I don't know which one it is, but where's Mike Siegelman? So sir, we really owe you a debt of gratitude, and you may not even realize it. So Alan also served as a grad assistant for 2 years after he finished ROTC, which is pretty unusual for the Army to let you stay once you've been commissioned. But he had an opportunity, and the Army let him stay, and probably a good thing, because Alan's last evaluation or assessment from his boss, the Assistant Athletic Director, Mr. Siegelman, said lacks a work ethic and maturity. That might be because
he was a mess.
Well, that might be because your temper got the best of you, and sure, he may have sent out a Christmas card to all the employees that said, on your behalf, that said, "Hey, I'm so proud of all of you and myself." Alan might have done that. Alan may have posted a flyer on campus that offered you up as offering ballroom dancing lessons without your knowledge.
The vice president was so disappointed that it wasn't true.
Yeah, exactly right. Consequently, that evaluation, I think, got Alan's attention. So I think that was the beginning of the. Sure, you were mad and you really couldn't see the potential, but it was there, and it was there in spades, and all of us have seen that over the course of the year. So, Alan being Alan, he asked me, "Hey, I want you to say like 2 or 3 words, or 2 or 3 minutes worth of stuff on me, and then I want you to focus on what it means for other families in the military, regardless of service, what they sacrifice in serving their country." And I think that's important, but since I outrank Alan, I am going to ignore his request. And I'm going to recognize his service, because he is the guy, and I think Stormy would attest to this, or anybody that's worked with him, he's always deflecting credit, and he is always trying to point, make sure other people are recognized, not Alan. And that's him. So sorry, Alan, you lose. And I'm going to talk a little bit about you, if I could, for just a minute, but try to frame it in such a way that it's your family as the example of what other families do in terms of their service and sacrifice. So 30 years of service. Those 30 years included 20 years in combat or operational units. So Stan knows what this means. A couple of you, I'm sure, are familiar enough with that to know exceedingly long hours. You're training, you're out in the field, living in tents, training regardless of weather. You're training to deploy, and then you deploy. And when you're not training or deployed, the hours are horrifically long. And that's been the story for his entire life, probably since you were a second lieutenant. It never changed. And people lose sight of the sacrifices that, it's, you understand a little more obviously once you get much more senior, but those are young families, and they are making the same sacrifices every day that Alan and his family made when he was a young lieutenant. He always took the heart, so his 30 years included 3 deployments. One to Somalia as a first lieutenant, so a pretty young guy, and now he's in Somalia. For those of you who have seen the movie Black Hawk Down, you know what that means, and you know the environment that he went into. And this is after the majority of the combat troops had started to pull out, and you've got Alan and really a pretty small group of people there doing patrols in the city of Mogadishu, delivering supplies, in an environment where you had a lot of people give their life for their country just several months preceding that. So as a lieutenant, he's doing that. Then as a major, he is selected to be the aide-de-camp to the First Corps Commander, Lieutenant General Jim Dubik. Very difficult guy to work for, and so I queried my fellow general officers in our branch. I said, hey, are you tracking any other, we're Adjutant General Corps officers, so we're human resource guys. I said, are you tracking any other Adjutant General Corps officer who was ever selected to be a Corps Commander's aide, either in garrison or combat? And the answer is no. So we are not tracking any other person in our specialty ever to be selected for that. And you talk about a testament to how highly thought of Alan was. So, and that job is, so he took him as the Corps Commander at Fort Lewis, and then he decided to keep a personnelist as his aide in a combat theater, which is something that just doesn't happen because really we don't have the skill in the background to take care of the boss and do everything that the boss needs done in that kind of theater. So he's setting up meetings with the president, with the prime minister. They're doing 200 tours all around country in combat aircraft, whatever, trying to make sure the general's safe. He's got all his talking points. He knows where he's going, all that kind of stuff. So that's just, that is literally unheard of. And then finally, his last tour to Iraq as the G1 of the 25th Infantry Division. So 30 years, again, a lot of that time in combat units. And Alan, whether it was combat or not, Alan always took the hard jobs that he was asked to take, or he sought them, and he knocked it out of the park 100% of the time. So again, just tremendous. And like everybody else who serves, especially as you get more senior, the demands increase, and that means that the service and sacrifice that the family makes increases over time. And that is nowhere else more true than it is with Andrea and the girls. So 14 moves in 30 years, leaving schools that you just got accustomed to and friends that you just got accustomed to behind, going to a new place. Now you don't have any friends because you're usually not in the military. You're not always in a military community. You're having to rejoin a sports team, and they don't want the outsider to be on the varsity because Jimmy or Janie's been there since they were a freshman, and you're the new sophomore, junior, senior that showed up, and so you're having to fight a lot harder. You're worried about your dad. Is he gonna come home? Is he safe? And you're too afraid to talk about it with each other. but you're all thinking it. And what you don't know is that dad or mom, whoever it happens to be, in this case dad, while they're deployed in theater, they're working 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, and for 1 year or 18 months or 15 months, whatever it is, there's not a single day off. Ever, very rarely, especially again, as you get more senior. So, so thanks to you ladies for what you've done to help and support him, and all that you've endured, again, to make his life possible. Before I talk about my personal experience, because I really haven't known Alan a long time. Before I talk about my personal experience with Alan, I want to call on a couple of people from the command that I just left and Alan just left, who have served with him recently, to just say a little bit about serving with Alan, who is the Chief of Staff, and if I could, Stormy Looney. Stormy is our Director of Human Resources for the command, so I'm going to ask Stormy to tell some lies about Alan.
Good afternoon, everybody. I've got notes, it's not long, I promise, but I am going to talk about you, and I do have to put my glasses on because I'm at that age where I need them. So, Alan, I've had the privilege and honor of working with Alan for 3 years now. My first Army unit, I retired Navy, right? We won't talk about the mule that was brought into my office during Army Navy that somebody had something to do with. But outside of that, it's an honor and privilege working with Alan Go Navy. But he and Andrea have become good friends to me. And as the Chief of Staff, if you're not familiar with that position, you get people coming to you all the time with problems, challenging issues. They'll tell you it's fun, but it's not fun. And I was a frequent flyer of that in that regard into his office, always coming in with this, what seemingly, is an impossible problem that I can't solve. I don't know how to do it. And Alan, every time with grace and patience, would help me find solutions. But he didn't micromanage me either. John Maxwell provides a definition of leadership as someone who knows the way, shows the way, and is the way. And that's Alan. Alan is a true leader. He shares his knowledge and his expertise with you, right? So you know what you got to do. He guides you to possible solutions, but at the same time, he allows you to work through them yourself. And then he practices what he preaches. He does it. He's able to step in and do whatever it takes. And just, again, true leader. So not long after we got there, I hadn't been on board, 9 months maybe. We had to do this major reorganization with Fifth Corps. We had to move 1,700 people in less than 6 months so that this operational unit could move into the complex. And as we start planning to do that, COVID hits. Now we've got to move 1,700 people safely. At the same time, we're trying to figure out how to make them telework because none of them had been teleworking before. And true to form, Alan's calm, he's gracious, he's helping me figure this out because it's the people part and the logistics part. He's just a true leader. He's always provided support and guidance to me and to the rest of the team. Ed and I, because Ed's a frequent flyer as well into his office, able to just help direct people to the right thing, get it done, and be happy about doing it. You did it every time, Alan. You made it easy. You made a job that sometimes is not so enjoyable, very, very enjoyable, and that's a testament to you. And that's why, for those of you who don't know at HRC, he was fondly referred to as the no drama llama, because it didn't matter what it was. He calmed it down, and he made it hard. So I just want to say thank you from everybody at HRC. We really appreciate your dedication, your support, and your leadership. And one time I'll say it.
Ed was our DE, so he was our Director of Budget, and so these guys had a love affair that whether they liked it or not, they had to have it. So Ed, if you could.
Yeah, he had 3 billion reasons to hate me. So we had a $3 billion budget, which is extraordinary. My budget currently that I'm doing is $3 million. So the Army does put a lot of pressure on you. And Alan, I swear to God, if I was probably second to Stormy, but I know I called you every day and said, hey, I got a problem. And you always, like Stormy said, graciously accepted that problem. And then we came up with a solution. Oftentimes, we spent a lot of time in the boss's office trying to figure out how we were going to spend on two different priorities the same amount of money. And we tried to figure that out. And I don't know the countless hours that you had to run interference with some of the other staff members out there that, you know, they had a mission and they had to do it, but we didn't have enough money. And I always appreciated that. You always listened, and like you were no drama llama every day. And many times we sit in our staff meetings and we just laugh because you come up with these crazy things that would come out of nowhere, usually from the Pentagon, and you'd have to figure out how to do it. And exceptional command group, the best I'd ever been in for both of you guys. As leaders, exceptional. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart. That made my job bearable, and I actually think at one point I loved it, and then I retired. But no, it was a great experience, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat with you guys.
Real quick, if I could, probably a reflection back, Stan Slinsky. Stan, good.
Yeah.
Keep it G-rated.
There goes the neighborhood.
Well, General Callaway just asked me in the hallway to say something, so, you know, unlike the HRC team here, I have nothing prepared. But I will say, you know, I appreciate the opportunity. Quite honestly, you know, General Callaway, he was my landlord at Fort Campbell for 3 years, and that was our first time stationed in the Nashville area, and it really set a really, I'm still there, and you know, just the hospitality and the environment there, and being at Fort Campbell on our 1st Airborne Division really helped our family, and certainly, you know, we're still there, obviously. So I thank General Callaway for that, as well as when I was in the Pentagon, I was, you know, going through a difficult time when I just got promoted to colonel. I was thinking about retiring. I didn't want to stay in, and I worked for Lieutenant General Spohr at the time, and General Callaway and I were. We saw each other on a frequent basis, and you know, he as well as General Spohr convinced me to stay in and eventually go to the Army War College, Commander Brigade in the 101st Airborne Division in combat. So, you know, thank you to you, sir, for your leadership and everything you've helped me with over the years. You know, Al and I started here, and I think it's awesome that, you know, and I appreciate the opportunity here. I wish I would have known about the ceremony in Louisville because I live 2 hours from Al, and I wouldn't have to flown here. But I probably would have gone to that one instead. but I do appreciate the opportunity to come here and obviously see everybody and see old friends here, and actually our career started here. The foundation of the discipline and the character, you know, a lot of that came from our families, from school, from church, growing up, but really, you know, a lot of it was right here. And it was the people that were older than us. You know, Al is older than me. I know it looks it. He is a year older than me, but really is, you know, the leadership that Al and Ed McGill and Scott Mullen and Gary Howe and Greg Edwards and Coach Hadachek, you know, provided us here, and an example that they set here on the field for us really helped us. It helped me for sure. You know, over a 27-year career, I didn't stay 30. I didn't want to let the Army kick me out, so I got out 3 years ago and stayed in the Nashville area. But really, it all started here, and the foundation and character. Al and I were never stationed together. I mean, briefly in Washington D.C. we were, because, you know, 20 years of his operational career was really, I mean, let's be honest, it was Hawaii and Seattle, Washington. That was like 18 of it. He spent 2 years in Texas and 18 years in Hawaii and Seattle. Unlike Al, I was in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Fort Campbell, Kentucky. You know, I actually was in hard places. And Al was in human resources, so he could write his own orders. And so he assigned himself to Hawaii over and over and over again. I'm like, oh, where are you going next? Hawaii. Where are you going next? I'm like, Afghanistan. Iraq, Kuwait. So I wasn't a person else and didn't have the luxury of writing my own orders. but I did, Naya's, I held her this big, right? When we were stationed in Virginia together for a brief time, and so proud of what the girls have become, and all of you, and Al, thank you for your service and your dedication to our country, leading that proper example. And like Joe said, I've never, in my 27-year career in the Army, I've never seen an infantry officer, 3-star general, pick a logistician or a human resource person to be their aide-de-camp, and to be their aide-de-camp in combat. That really, tells you the kind of character that Al has, the kind of commitment, dedication to the Army, to his profession, to his specialty in human resources. And, I wish you the best of luck, brother, in everything you do with your family as well. And, we're only 2 hours away. We never see each other except for events like this. But I hope that we get to see each other in your retirement as well. So thank you very much.
Almost was a mistake. And anyone else that knows Alan and had the privilege of serving with him would echo similar sentiments that those you heard expressed here today. And just a quick anecdote that I didn't mention is, people start, not everybody stays in the military, but as you go up, it becomes increasingly more competitive, obviously, to get promoted. And so when you get to the level of colonel, resident selection for War College, and brigade command, you're talking about 8 or 9% of the officers who remain who are selected for those opportunities. So that really is a testament, again, to both Stan and Alan for their tremendous dedication, competence, and I think, again, everybody here had a little bit of a role in that for both of them. So the Army promotion system, pretty fair. And I think all of us are very confident that it's a fair process, but I will tell you that, and I'm not being humble or clever, the roles today should be reversed. He should be up here hosting my retirement, and I should be sitting there. Because absolutely not do I believe, or I believe firmly that Alan Kellogg is a better man, better officer, and a better person than I ever thought about being, and he should be up there. He should be standing up here as a general officer. So if you've got a couple of anecdotes about the system not being perfect, there should be a star by Alan Kellogg's name, because he should be a general officer. And I'll talk just a little bit about maybe why that didn't happen, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen for the right reason. So in 2015, I got a call from Lieutenant General Lanza, who was the First Corps commander, and I was in the General Officer Management Office, so we're in charge of managing all the Army's generals. And General Lanza, I was a colonel at the time. He's a 3-star general. He says, "Hey Joe, you got a second?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "He goes, do you know Alan Kellogg?" I'm like, "Yes, sir." I said, I know him by name and reputation, but I really don't know him personally." He goes, "Holy smokes, man. That guy's the best friggin' officer I've ever served with." He goes, "I'm telling you, that kid is the best officer in the entire Pacific Theater, and I don't care what branch." So you're talking thousands of officers, and you've got a field artillery 3-star general, and that's how strongly he felt about Alan. So a little time goes by. I'm like, "Hey, I know him. I know he's got a great reputation." A few days later, or a couple months later, Lieutenant General Tom Siemens, who was later Alan's boss and my boss several times, comes in the office. He goes, "Hey," he goes, "Do you know Alan?" I said, "Sir, I don't really know Alan that well. I just know him by reputation." He said, "Let me tell you a little story about Alan." And he said, "Alan Kellogg is the reason that the AG Board of Directors, that's all the AG, the Human Resources Generals, they get together and they try to manage talent. And so that's several thousand officers that you're trying to figure out, okay, who's the most talented guys and what do we do with them to make sure the right people get the right opportunities." And he says, "Alan Kellogg is the reason that the Board of Directors completely changed its process, because no one in the Board of Directors really knew Alan that well at the time, and we realized quickly how talented Alan was, and so we said, hey, we need to look ourselves in the eye and ask if we're really doing due diligence out there, because Alan Kellogg is awesome. I don't think you don't know this, because I know that he never would have told you that. It says, you are the reason that the board completely changed how they worked, because they didn't want someone like you to go unnoticed, and the potential that there could be other Alan Kellogg's, floating around out in Hawaii that nobody really knew. Thanks, Dan. And then, so I said, well, I need to go probably visit out there and see who this guy is. So I went TDY and visit Alan, and he was the core G1. And so I was a 1-star general. I was I was on the list of 1-star general, and I meet Alan, and I'm like, holy smokes, man, who the heck is this dude? He is on it. I mean, he knew competence off the chart, and you could see in every office that he walked into the reverence and the respect that the people that work for him had. I'm like, man, I'm missing something, because I ain't him. That guy's freaking awesome. So I go back to the Pentagon. I talk to General Siemens, and I'm leaving my job in general officer management, and we decide, hey, Alan Kellogg needs to be the guy that replaces you. So somebody theorized that the GOMO chief is the most powerful colonel in the entire Army, and whether that's true or not, I don't know. Now I ended up there. If that's the case, I damn sure don't know. But we said, hey, Alan really needs to be the guy, because Alan has got the right humility, the right skill set, the right level of dedication. He's the right guy to bring into the job. So we call Alan. I think actually General Siemens calls me, talks to you, and says, hey, we want you to replace Joe as the chief of general officer management. And Alan is like, good. He says, man, I'm really honored. I'd be really honored to do that, but unfortunately, or fortunately, I made a commitment to my wife, and I can't do it. Man, he says, Andrea wanted to finish her nursing degree. I made a commitment to her that I would give her the opportunity to do it, and if I come to DC on that timeline, she's not going to have the opportunity to do it. So I respectfully have to decline that unless ordered otherwise. Or like, okay, he's doing the right thing for his family. So potential reason number one that Alan's not standing up here today, because I'm sure, again, if he had taken that job, he would be here, not me, because he would have knocked my doors off in that job. But that didn't happen because his family was more important to him than professional advancement and personal accomplishment. So kudos to you. So instead, Andrea finishes or starts her degree and gets on the right path there, and Alan goes to Fort Knox, Kentucky to be the director of enlisted personnel. So he's managing assignments for about 450,000 enlisted folks. So a pretty big job. At which point Alan gets asked to be after a year there, gets asked to be the XO to the G1 of the Army, who's General Siemens, who's the 3-star. So what do? They pick the best human resources colonel in the Army, who we feel has the most potential to be a general officer, and they say and they pick that guy to be the G1. So Alan was the selection. Alan says, okay, I'm gonna leave my family at Fort Knox because these beautiful 2 young ladies had 5 schools in 5 years. And so instead of doing that, he left them there for a year, went to DC, lived in somebody's basement and worked like 20 hours a day, 6 days a week, in a horrible job for a great guy, a horrible job for a great guy. And when he was asked to stay the second year, he said, so the reason we bring them to the Pentagon is they get visibility, they get experience, they get to know the Pentagon, this, that, and the other, and again, it increases their potential to become a general officer. And Alan says, you know what? That's not the right, as much as I would like to do that, and I hate to say no, the right thing for me to do is go back and be with my family. Because I've been away for a year, I've had all these horrible jobs. He elects, instead of doing that, again, almost certainly would have been a general officer because he wants to be with his family. Again, tough decision for the absolute correct reason, again. So, and so he ends up going back to Fort Knox, and I go to Fort Knox to take over as the commanding general for Human Resources Command. And I am selfishly elated that Alan made that decision, because when I show up, I need a new chief of staff. And so I said, okay, we got about 50 colonels in Human Resources Command. Give me a slate. Who's the best person? No, never mind. Don't give me a slate. I don't really need it. I want Alan to be the chief of staff. Brilliant decision on my part, right? Ed talked a little bit about it, but I think even Stan, I think you probably don't know, or people in the military, and probably even his family doesn't know about the level of responsibility that he had as the chief of staff for Human Resources. So Ed mentioned $3 billion a year budget. Alan comes in as the chief of staff day one. We were at a ceremony, and Alan comes up to me, and he's like, "Hey, sir." Thanks, Alan. That was because a bird had targeted me. Shat all upon me. And that was a precursor of things to come. Because we dealt with a lot of shat. And Alan took care of a lot of it. So $3 billion budget, a 3,500 person organization, and you're responsible for basically total human resources support for over 500,000 people. That is kind of a hard thing to get your arms wrapped around. And I'm telling you, that organization probably would have fallen on its face without that man right there. And I am, I can never express to you the gratitude and how lucky I was that you happened to be there and you happened to be the guy that stepped into that job. Because there's nobody else that I know or have served with that could have done the job you did with the mess that we had to deal with. So the bad news bear, I mean, we dealt with a lot of it, and it was daily. There was some horrific failure or thing that occurred, and Alan was always the deliverer of the bad news. Whether it was, hey, we're $60 million short, which we were on our IT budget, and what are we going to do? But he would deliver the bad news, and he always had a solution. And he's a team builder, and everybody respects and loves him, so everybody rallies around him. And without that, we would have just been in an unbelievable world of hurt. So, my hat's off to you. Again, always had the solution, and always rallied people to make it happen. Passionate about, so late at night, he's got about an hour and 15-minute drive to get home every night. So at 7 o'clock, he'd come into the office, or 6:30, or whatever time it was. He'd wander into the office and say, "Hey, sir, Specialist Jones and his family in Korea, they really need to get the death certificate, or they need to get this award for somebody who died." It was a daily occurrence that there's some item that should have been 30 levels below Alan getting solved, but nobody else could solve it. And Alan cared enough to put all the budget issues aside and all the other stuff and make sure that some soldier and his or her family were given the care and service that they needed. Whether, again, midnight, Saturday, Sunday at 10 o'clock at night, somebody died, Alan's on the phone, and he's the guy trying to make sure that somebody is taken care of, again, often to the detriment of being able to spend time with Andre and the girls, because he cared deeply about taking care of other folks. You've impacted thousands and thousands of people. You impacted the command, but I just don't know what to tell you about how important you've been to so many people in the course of your career. And I know that that would not have been possible without the sacrifice of Andrea and Naya and Emily. And they paid a price for it. And our hats are off to you to say thank you for what you did for your dad. So if I could, I'll close it out. If I could get, I'm indebted to you, and the nation's indebted to you for your 30 years of service and sacrifice. And it's a debt that can never be repaid. So thank you for your service, thank you for your friendship, and thank you for everything that you've done for so many, and the same to Andre and the girls. So if I could, a round of applause for both Alan and his family. He's gonna kick my ass later.
A moment of silence for Colonel Kellogg will now receive a number of items to commemorate his service and commitment to the United States of America. Colonel Kellogg and his wife will receive a retirement award, a certificate of retirement from the Chief of Staff of the Army, and an American flag. Major General Calloway will now present Colonel Kellogg with his retirement award, the Distinguished Service Medal. Attention orders. For exceptional meritorious service over a 30-year career while serving in positions of increased responsibility, culminating as the HRC Chief of Staff. His dedication, outstanding leadership, and service to soldiers contributed to the accomplishments of the command's missions and improved Army readiness. Colonel Kellogg's distinctive accomplishments are in keeping with the finest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon him, the United States Army Human Resources Command, and the United States Army.
So a quick note about that award. Guys like Patton, when they retired, it's the same award they got. So I sat in the office that gave these awards to the Chief of Staff of the Army and the Secretary to approve them, and they are deaf on these awards. And very few colonels, especially if you're a colonel who's not a combat arms guy and a brigade commander in combat or something like that, get this award as their retirement award. It's the highest peacetime award you can get in the Army. Again, a credit to Alan's, to respect him and to his service. So, anyway.
Good job, Alan.
Colonel Kellogg will now receive his retirement certificate. It reads, Headquarters, Department of the Army Special Orders. By order of the Chief of the Staff, United States Army, General James C. McConville. Colonel Kellogg is retired from the active service with an effective date of 1 November 2022. Major General Kellogg will now present the retirement flag. Major General Calloway will now present the retirement flag to Colonel Kellogg. It was flown in Iraq to commemorate his service. Would Andrea Kellogg please come forward? Andrea is being presented with a certificate of appreciation from the Chief of Staff of the Army. It reads that she has earned grateful appreciation for her unselfish, faithful, and devoted service. Her unfailing support and understanding helped to make possible her spouse's lasting contribution to the nation.
Good job.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a round of applause for Colonel Kellogg and his family. Alan, the floor is finally yours.
Well, there was a lot of lies being told today, so I'm going to dispute some of them, but I just want to say thanks. I want to do something that's kind of unique and different. This is a special weekend, not only for our family, but it's Father's Day weekend. Could I have all the fathers please stand up? I just want to recognize the fathers that are here today. Give them a round of applause. The other thing I want to do is those veterans in the audience, and I know we have a handful of veterans. If we could have our veterans stand up, I just want to give them a round of applause too. So that we can do that. And I'm here today personally because of folks like this that help chart a path that supported me every step of the way. Sir, I just want to say thanks. Kind words. efforts. It's been an honor and pleasure to work with you. You inspire positive change each and every day. You allow me to bring donkeys into the building. Had to renegotiate cleaning contracts because the cleaning crew got quite upset. So now the cleaning contract reads that if a donkey craps on the floor, you have to clean it up. But thank you. You taught me what right looks like. I mean, you know, talking to Stan, you know, others that you've crossed paths with, they just absolutely respect you. So it was an honor and privilege. You kept a very low-key environment to where we could have fun, but we were able to work hard too, so I appreciate that. I just want to say a personal thanks to Drake being back here. You know, people ask, are you trying to relive your past? No, I'm coming back, as General Callaway talked, to where it all started. You know, 30 plus years ago, Andre and I met here. This is where the journey started. She's been with me every step of the way, so it's only natural to be able to come back. Coach Stepsis, you got the ball rolling, so I just want to say thanks. Appreciate you helping out. I'd also like to thank, you know, the good Lord is watched over me every step of the way. There was doors that were clearly open that I had no part or no business in, and I walked through those doors. There was doors that were clearly shut, and I didn't at the time understand the reasons why, and now I do. And it's I wouldn't change anything with my career. It's been an absolute blessing, and I just want to say that thank the good Lord. Obviously, I want to thank my parents. My mom obviously can't be here today, but one of the other reasons why we did it here was just her presence. For 4 years, she sat in the stadium out there, you know, watching, supporting it. She grew so close to many of our teammates. You know, I'll give one example, Mike Scherp. In 1988, he was in a bad car accident right outside Iowa City. He had no one to turn to, so he reached out to my parents. And both he and his girlfriend were banged up pretty bad. They were in the hospital, Mercy Hospital in Iowa City. From that point, he developed a relationship with my parents. So every time he saw my parents, he called them Mom and Dad. It wasn't Gary and Kathy. And then when my mom died, one of the first guys I called was Mike Scherp. And he said, I'm there, whatever you need. And he served as a pallbearer for my mom's funeral. And he actually drove the limo as a part of the funeral too. And but that's the character of the folks that are a part of this team, and I just want to say thanks. But back to my parents. You know, a lot of tough love growing up. You know, that was only kind of the tip of the iceberg of some of the things you heard today. There may have been a toilet removed from our house and put in the front yard for punishment. I had done something at one point in time. And I may have had 20 stitches on my head as I tried to jump from one 6-foot retaining wall to another, thinking I could make it. I mean, it was event after event, so I got to give my parents a lot of credit. As General Callaway talked, you know, my dad being a veteran, he showed me what right would look like each and every day. And just truly blessed to have him in my life, and obviously the presence of my mom. So, you know, we're talking about presence of my mom, 700 letters, that's a lot of letters. A lot of letters were what was happening that particular day, or, you know, what was going on in life, but it always talked about community, her faith, her family, what was important to her. And when you talk about presence, so about 2 weeks ago, I was going through a lot of my military stuff, and Stan and some of the others in the room remember this. As you move around theater, mail sometimes doesn't catch up to you, and it's tough to, a lot of times you'll get retrograde mail, and you may not get your mail in a timely manner just based upon moving, shutting down post offices. So as I'm cleaning out stuff 2 weeks ago, I discovered 25 letters that I had not opened. And I'll find the time, and I'll find the appropriate time to walk it, but you know, that, you know, obviously my mom's speaking to me here today that, you know, her presence is here, her support's here, and I couldn't ask for more. So I'm thankful for that. And obviously, you know, turning to my family, General Callaway talked a lot, and I think it kind of reinforces the importance of my family. What Andrea does now as a NICU nurse is definitely her calling. Her touch and her love and what she brings to work each and every day, the lives that she has saved, you know, it pales in comparison to what I do each and every day when you're talking about what's hanging in the balance. Andrea, about a year into our marriage, we got dive certified, and one of the things that they teach you as a part of your certification is your dive buddy is the most important thing. And so when you're in tough conditions, if something happens, you have a catastrophic failure, you need to lean on your dive buddy. Andre and I have done probably 1,000 dives together roughly, and 99.9% of the time we had no issues whatsoever. About 10 years ago, we were doing a night dive in about 100 feet of water off the coast of Waikiki. Going out there, it was relatively calm conditions, but as soon as we hit the water, we knew that it was a huge mistake. And so what they teach you is stay close to your dive buddy. We grabbed onto each other's, it's called buoyancy control device, and just looked each other in the eye about 2 inches away from each other and said, hey, we got this. And over the last 30 years, that's kind of how we operated. As we dealt with deployment, as we dealt with deaths, as we dealt with personal hardships, we just kind of grabbed on each other. We were dive buddies both on land and in the ocean, and that's the way we carried ourselves. And so, just a personal thanks. You can open it later, but just my love and appreciation for you. And again, you didn't sign up for this life. You embraced it. You gave back. You love soldiers and their families, and I'm just so grateful. And thank you. If we can give her a round of applause. Other people that didn't sign up for this life is Nine Emery, and again, you've talked about five schools in 5 years, and just what young kids have to go through, and the strength and resiliency that they've lived with. For those that know me, as you walk in my office, I have 2 pictures of the girl. Normally, people put pictures so only the folks sitting at the seat or the computer monitor can see it, but I always post them out. And I do that for 2 reasons. So anybody that walks in my office, the first thing they see is 2 pictures of my girl. One, that reinforces where my priority lies. And then secondly, as I walk in the office, the first thing I see is their pictures. And so I think about the decisions I make today. Are they going to be proud of me? Or are they going to be proud of the decisions I make as a leader? And so that they have helped ground me, and I'm just so thankful and so grateful. And so this will, I'll leave it at this. This will help feed your addictions. I just wanted to give thanks, and you've heard enough about me today. You don't need to hear any more, but it's really about why we did it here is to say thanks to all of you. I would not be standing here today without the influence. Stan talked about this. So the blood, sweat, and tears on this field is nothing you can imagine or put into words of just how to prepare you for life's challenges. I remember the first time I entered the huddle, and as I looked around the huddle, it wasn't. I wasn't gloating that I was actually made the starting lineup. As I looked around the huddle, I don't want to let the guys in the huddle down. I don't want to mess up my play. I don't want to be the reason why this play fails. And I think that's what's special. So over the last 30 years, I can't thank all these guys for their love and support. I want special thanks to my sister and her family. So all this stuff put together. So the gift boxes I brought last fall is because my sister and my brother-in-law, they have a passion. They know the Drake Bulldog guys as well as I know them. They've heard all the stories. But I tell you what, as my sister is more than a sister. She's a friend. And so there's not a week or days that go by that I don't talk to her on a regular basis. And because we share a lot, we talk a lot, and we support each other. And sis, I love you, and I love your family. Your family is absolutely wonderful, and for them to be here today is pretty amazing. To the Tegmeyers, this was done. So I know that since I joined the family, I've helped improve your golf game. I know that. So, but in all seriousness, as General Calloway talked, we got Andre's parents here. We got Andre's brother, sister-in-law. Just amazing family from day one. As we did the bachelor party in Humboldt, and we were not allowed back at the golf course ever again. But just amazing. They've treated me like I was a part of the family over the last 30 years. Every location we've been to, the 14 moves, they've come to visit us. When I've deployed, they have been there to support Andre and the girls. And I couldn't ask for it. As we moved across country, we stayed with Tony with 6 cats and 4 birds at his house. And I think we left with 3 cats. But that's the kind of family I married into, and I just want to say a personal thanks. I'll close with this. As I talk about Drake Bulldog and my military teammates, I think there's a lot of comparison. I think that's why, and it's a true statement that Stan and I were the worst cadets in the history of Drake ROTC. And the only reason I got into it, I think B. Nelson and maybe Ed McGill told me, hey, it's an easy A, old guy here at Drake. So that's why I'm standing here 30 years later. And but you know, there's so much comparisons to the military and athletics, and that's what I think why I stayed. And it's true when they talk about every player needs every teammate on every play to survive. To win requires relationships, and the relationships you see here today are pretty special. And people from different backgrounds, you got country boys, city boys, people that are poor, people that are well off, all merge together. And as you look in the huddle and look around the huddle, are folks that you may not have necessarily come in contact with at some point in your life, but now you're blood brothers, and no one sitting in the stands understands or appreciate what it took to get to that point. And I think that's so true in the military. So that's why I think I stayed. And another reason why I think I stayed, and I'll end with this story. And I think if you ask Joe Calloway, Stan Sawinski, Stormy Looney, Ed Van Ravenstein, and the other veterans here in the room, it's serving your country is pretty special. And what the flag represents and what it stands for, pretty special. But what hit me, and probably one of the reasons why I stayed, was not only do you give hope to others within your formations, but the hope that you give to others. And a quick story, and I'll close out here. So back in 2007, General Calloway talked when I was aide to the, it's called the Minsticky Commanders. He was in charge of standing up all the Army and police forces across Iraq. And we were out and about quite often. And one day we were in a pretty bad area of Baghdad on a convoy. But because he's a senior guy, we had a blanket of protection all around us, attack helicopters overhead, quick reaction force on standby in case something happens. But the interesting thing is there wasn't a soul in the streets. It was like a ghost town, which in some respects that can be good or bad. You just don't know what's coming. And I remember seeing something off in the distance, and it was like a little white thing blown in the wind, and I couldn't tell if it was a flag or something else. And as I got closer, I realized it was a young Iraqi girl, and she was probably, at the time, she was the same age as my girls and Coach Steps' girls right now. And what struck me immediately was just how blessed we are to live in an environment where we don't have to worry about what's going to happen next, and that we have opportunities set in front of us. And as I got closer, I noticed she didn't have shoes on. She was carrying a little doll in her hand, and her dress was probably nice at one point in time, but it was covered in dirt and grime and stuff like that. And then as I passed by her, our eyes connected, and she looked at me and she smiled. And that smile told me a lot. It told me that that she had hope for a brighter future. It told me that she had hope for a quality education. It told me that she had hope for financial stability. And that it told me that she had hope for hopefully a nation free of war. And to me, if you ask, if anybody asks me, what does it mean to serve? To me, that's what it means to serve. Is we have the ability to give hope to others, and I took that seriously. I know those that served in this room took it seriously too, and that's something I will remember for the rest of my life. No one will remember that I've served probably 5 years from now, but that is something that I will remember and take with me. So with that, I'll end with one final story. So. A promotion, and Joe Calloway knows this guy, so I won't say him by name in case this is being recorded. So he is getting promoted to lieutenant colonel, and about 100 people in attendance. And he said, in one of the most bizarre statements I think I've ever heard, he said, I have, as he's closing out comments, he goes, I have 19 beers, and I don't want to go home with any beers. And so this other guy that was in attendance, former football player, lieutenant colonel also, goes up to the pile of 19 beers, I don't know how you went from whatever it was, 24 to 19. I don't know if you drank 5 in the route over the promotions level. But this particular Lieutenant Colonel slams 5 beers, goes up to this newly promoted Lieutenant Colonel and said, "I just drank 40% of your beers." So my point is, if we don't get out to the parking lot, there's probably students down there drinking 50% of the beers that I have laid out. So, but again, thank you for all coming. Please, we have catered food, plenty of beer down there. Please stay and enjoy it. And appreciate Sean Hewitt and all the guys that helped set things up. And again, appreciate your time today.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. Thank you again for your attendance. Please join Colonel Kellogg and his family for a traditional tailgate at West Stadium parking lot. Please join me personally.